Winter had swallowed Frost Hollow whole when a small boy burst out of the snow-covered woods, barefoot and crying, his breath shaking in the frozen air. He didn't run toward a town, or a house, or a warm light. He ran straight toward a lone Navy SEAL, walking the roadside trail with his German Shepherd. The boy grabbed the man's coat with both hands, trembling. "Please, follow me home. My mom won't wake up." For a moment, everything went still. The snow, the wind, even Ranger, the trained service dog, froze, ears high, sensing something beyond fear. Noah Carter had seen desperation before on battlefields halfway around the world, but never in eyes this young. And as he looked at the boy's frostbitten feet, at the way the child leaned against him, as if he were the last safe place left on Earth, he felt it. That quiet nudge that some people call instinct, and others call a whisper from God. He followed the boy into the deepening dusk, unaware that this single step would change all of their lives forever. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. Share this story, leave a comment, and subscribe for more true-life miracles and moments of hope. The boy who emerged from the snow, Winter pressed hard against Frost Hollow, a cold so fierce it swallowed sound and light alike. Noah Carter walked the narrow forest path with the steady patience of a man who had learned long ago not to fear silence. At nearly 40, he carried the imposing build of a former Navy SEAL, broad shoulders, a firm jaw mapped with faint weather lines, and a gait marked subtly by an old injury in his left knee. His beard, trimmed close, showed threads of silver at the temples. There was usually warmth in his dark brown eyes, but the winter winds made them thoughtful, almost distant. Beside him padded Ranger, his 5-year-old German Shepherd. Ranger's coat of black and tan bristled lightly with each gust. His harness bore a stark white patch. Service dog, do not pet. Yet anyone could see the quiet loyalty in the way he moved. Alert, intelligent, constantly scanning. The sort of dog that mirrored his handler's discipline and carried his own kind of history in the focused set of his amber eyes. They were halfway down the trail when the wind split with a sharp, sudden cry. Noah froze. Ranger halted too, muscles taut. From between the pines, a small figure burst into the open, running, stumbling, falling into the snow, before scrambling to his feet again. The boy could not have been more than 9. He was painfully thin under a threadbare shirt, his bare feet red and raw from the cold. His hair, a tangled brown, stuck to his forehead, and his breath came out in frantic white bursts. The boy looked up at Noah with eyes wide from fear and something deeper, desperation that children were never meant to carry. "Please," his voice cracked in the frigid air. "Please come home with me. My mom, she won't wake up." For a heartbeat, Noah felt the past rise like a shadow. The memory of another winter, another call for help he had not reached in time. Pain flickered across his face, so brief most people would miss it. But Ranger sensed it, leaning forward with a soft, grounding sound. Noah knelt, lowering himself to eye level. "Hey," he said gently, though his pulse thudded hard. "You're safe now. Tell me your name." "Lucas," the boy whispered. "Lucas Turner." The cold tremor in his voice cut through whatever remained of Noah's emotional armor. He shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around Lucas's shaking shoulders, then lifted the boy into his truck. Ranger jumped into the back seat, positioning himself instinctively so his body heat pressed close to the child. On the ride, Lucas tried to explain between shivering breaths. He hadn't eaten since yesterday. His little sister was scared. The house was very cold, and their mother, she had been asleep all morning and wouldn't open her eyes. Every word felt like a stone dropping into Noah's chest. The deeper they drove into the woods, the narrower the road became, snow gathering in untouched drifts. The sun had begun to fall, throwing long shadows across the lonely stretch leading to the Turner home. When Noah stepped out of the truck, the sight before him made him inhale sharply. The house was small and wooden, but its neglect was unmistakable, paint peeled in long strips. One window was patched with damp cardboard. The front door hung crooked, letting wind push snow straight into the entryway. It was the kind of place winter could break without effort. Ranger's ears flicked forward, every sense sharpened. Noah opened the door with caution. Darkness washed over them, thick, stale, unmoving. The smell of damp fabric, cold ash, and something sour lingered in the air. The floor was cluttered with scattered clothes, cracked toys, and dishes left unwashed. It looked less like a home and more like the aftermath of a long struggle no one had won. On the sagging sofa lay a woman. Rachel Turner appeared to be in her early 30s, though exhaustion made her look older. She was slender, her face pale with an unhealthy gray tint beneath her skin. Light brown hair, tangled and unkempt, fell across her cheek. Her lips were cracked, her breathing so shallow Noah had to focus to see her chest move at all. A few feet away, a little girl sat curled beneath a thinning blanket. Emily Turner, 6 years old, small even for her age, clutched a worn stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her hair, a shade darker than her brother's, hung in uneven strands around a round, frightened face. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and fixed on the stranger entering her world. She did not cry. She only held her breath as if any sound might shatter what little safety she had left. Lucas stepped forward, voice breaking, as he looked toward the sofa. "I tried waking her all morning," he whispered, "but she wouldn't get up." Noah didn't answer immediately. He felt the temperature drop further inside himself, a mixture of urgency, fear, and the instinctive resolve that had defined years of service. He crouched beside Rachel, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. Her pulse was faint, too faint. Behind him, Ranger stood guard, gaze sweeping over every corner as though danger could be hiding in the shadows. The weight of the room pressed on Noah, 2 children trembling, a mother slipping toward the edge. No power, no heat, no food, no one else coming. For a moment, he let himself feel the heaviness. Then he exhaled slowly, letting resolve settle where panic threatened. He was a soldier. He had walked into worse sights. But this fractured little family, felt personal in a way he could not name. Noah straightened, eyes set with iron. The question was no longer if he should help them. It was how. Rescue plan in the winter storm. The house groaned with each gust of wind, as if the winter itself were pressing down on its fragile frame. Noah steadied his breathing, letting instinct override emotion. He checked Rachel Turner again, feeling the faint, uneven rise of her chest. Her skin, pale beneath the dull firelight, was icy to the touch. Up close he saw details he'd missed earlier. Faint shadows under her eyes, lips tinged blue, hair matted as though she had been fighting exhaustion for days. She was a young woman, early 30s at most, but hardship had carved lines along her brow. He drew the blanket higher around her, working methodically to warm her hands between his palms. No cell signal, no power, a blizzard overhead. If he didn't act decisively, she might not survive the hour. Noah rose, turning to Ranger. "Guard!" Ranger obeyed instantly, planting himself at the door like a silent sentry. His posture was calm but alert, ears pricked, eyes sweeping the dark outside. Even in low light, Noah could see the power in the dog's build, a maturity in the way he held himself, 5 years old, strong, focused. Ranger was trained for situations like this. In some ways, he handled stress better than most people. Emily Turner edged closer, drawn by the dog's presence. She was tiny, almost bird-like, with wisps of brown hair falling over her cheeks. Her blanket was too thin, too worn, its edges unraveling. She hesitated before placing a hand on Ranger's shoulder. When he didn't pull away, she leaned into him, finding warmth in the dense fur. Lucas hovered nearby, arms wrapped around himself. His small frame trembled beneath Noah's oversized coat. Noah crouched to meet his eyes. "You did the right thing coming to get help," he said quietly. Lucas swallowed hard. "I didn't know what else to do. Emily was crying. Mom wouldn't move." "Your mom is fighting," Noah replied, "and now she has help." Lucas's gaze dropped to the floor. "Dad left 5 days ago. He said he was coming back. He took the food money." The boy's throat tightened. "We waited, but Emily got hungry, and Mom got tired, really tired." Noah glanced around the room again, absorbing the evidence. The cold stove layered with soot, plates stacked with dried scraps, a refrigerator holding nothing but a half-empty water jug. The cardboard patch on the bedroom window rattled each time the wind howled. Rachel sucked in a sharp breath, her chest rising too fast, too shallow. "Easy," Noah murmured, kneeling again. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You're safe. I'm here." Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. A faint sound escaped her, a weak, nearly voiceless attempt at speaking. Noah leaned in but couldn't make out the words. She was slipping deeper into shock. He needed heat, water, food, medical stabilization. The fireplace crackled as the flame caught the last of the dry wood. He needed more fuel before it died. Without warmth, the children would deteriorate quickly, and Rachel, already in critical condition, would lose what little strength she had left. Noah stood, assessing the room one more time before moving to the back door. "Lucas, stay with your sister. I'm getting more firewood." The boy stiffened. "It's dark out there." "I won't be long," Noah promised. Ranger trotted beside him as they stepped outside, snow crunching under their boots. The cold bit hard, stinging Noah's face. He scanned the area with the sharp awareness of a trained soldier. The shed near the tree line leaned dangerously, its roof sagging under the weight of snow. Still, it was the only place firewood might be stored. Inside, he found a small pile, less than he hoped, more than he expected. Someone had chopped these logs recently, probably Rachel, trying to keep her children warm before she collapsed. He paused, feeling a heaviness stir inside him. No one should have had to face this alone. When he returned, Ranger shook the snow from his coat before resuming his guard post. Noah fed the fire with new logs, feeling warmth begin to pulse through the room again. Emily watched him with big, uncertain eyes. "Will Mommy wake up?" she whispered, her voice soft as crushed snow. Noah softened. "She will, but she needs us to help her stay warm." Emily's lower lip trembled. "Is she sick because we didn't have food?" Noah hesitated, not because he didn't know the truth, but because the truth was harsh. "She's sick because she's been trying too hard to take care of you both, without anyone helping her." Emily blinked, absorbing the words in quiet sadness. Noah wrapped another blanket around her shoulders, gently smoothing her hair. He could feel the girl leaning toward warmth, toward safety. Step by step, he stabilized the small household, warming blankets by the fire, boiling water from melted snow in an old pot he scrubbed clean. Checking Rachel's pulse again, encouraging the children to drink warm sips to fight the cold settling into their bones. As he worked, a flicker of anger sparked under Noah's ribs, not directed at these innocent faces, but at the man who had abandoned them. A man who had taken their money and left them in a winter that could kill even the strongest adult. It awakened an old part of Noah, a part forged by loss, the kind that sharpened his resolve. Hours passed in slow, dedicated motions, and at last Rachel's breathing eased, her face still pale, but less deathlike in the growing warmth. Noah finally allowed himself a breath. He wasn't done, not by a long shot, but for the first time since stepping into this collapsing home, hope had a foothold. Yet outside, the wind roared harder, a storm was rising, and somewhere beyond the swirling snow, someone else was coming. Secrets in the wooden box, night settled heavily over the Turner house, the storm outside scraping icy fingers across the brittle walls. Inside, the fire Noah had built still glowed faintly, its warmth holding back the cold that pressed at every crack and corner. Rachel Turner lay on the sofa where Noah had stabilized her earlier. In the shifting firelight, her features looked softer now, though exhaustion still marked her every line. She was a slender woman, her frame almost fragile beneath the blanket. Her skin held a pale undertone that suggested weeks of malnutrition, and her light brown hair, matted and knotted, fell around a face that might once have been lively. Now, beneath the weariness, she carried the hollowed look of someone who had been fighting alone for far too long. Lucas dozed sitting up, his head tipped against the wall, still wrapped in Noah's oversized coat. Emily slept curled against Ranger, who stayed perfectly still to keep from disturbing her. The dog's powerful body radiated heat, and his breath rose and fell in calm, steady waves. His amber eyes blinked slowly, patiently, never fully resting. Noah stood and stretched the stiffness from his back. The ache in his left knee flared, a reminder of the mission overseas that had left him with the injury and a lifetime of memories he rarely let surface. He pushed the thought aside and moved quietly toward the back of the house. He needed to understand what had led this family to the brink. The master bedroom was dim, smelling faintly of mildew and cold fabric. The mattress sagged in the center, blankets piled carelessly as though Rachel had no strength to keep up with even the simplest chores. He noticed the window patched with cardboard, trembling with each gust of wind. Ranger followed him inside, paws silent on the wooden floor. Noah knelt and lifted the hem of the bedspread. That was when he saw it, a wooden box tucked deep beneath the bed, its edges worn and a thin layer of dust coating the lid. He pulled it out and set it on the mattress. Ranger sniffed the air, his ears flicking in quiet curiosity. Inside the box lay a neat stack of overdue electric and water bills, every envelope stamped with warnings. Beneath them, several folded slips, prescriptions for antidepressants, all unfilled. Noah felt a weight settle low in his chest. Depression, medical neglect, isolation. He turned over a photograph, a family portrait taken on a sunny afternoon. In it, Rachel stood smiling, her hair clean and bright, her expression open. Next to her stood a tall man with strong shoulders and a clean-shaven face. His posture was confident, bordering on cocky, but his eyes, something in them seemed hard, unfriendly even. Lucas and Emily were younger, carefree, clinging to their mother's legs. Someone had written on the back, "Before everything fell apart." Noah stared at the words until they blurred slightly. He'd seen families fall apart before, on deployments, during storms, under pressures no one could predict. But this kind of collapse, the slow, silent kind, somehow felt heavier. He replaced the items gently, closed the lid, and slid the box back. Then he stood at the doorway, watching the shape of the sleeping family in the next room. For a moment, the firelight flickered across their faces, bonding them in a fragile image of safety that could be shattered with one wrong moment. He would not let that happen. Noah returned to the living room, checked Rachel's pulse one more time, then lowered himself against the front door. Habit guided his movements. He eased the compact pistol from its holster on his belt and rested it within reach, concealed beneath his coat. He didn't expect trouble, but experience had taught him that trouble rarely waited for an invitation. Ranger settled beside him, pressing his solid weight gently against Noah's leg. The dog's breathing was deep, steady. His presence was grounding, a tether that kept the darkness from creeping too far into Noah's thoughts. Hours dragged into night. The storm thickened outside. Silence ruled inside. Then, Ranger's ears shot up. His body stiffened. A low, rumbling growl vibrated through his chest. Noah's eyes snapped open instantly, instincts firing like a switch. He placed a hand on Ranger's shoulder. "What is it?" he whispered. The dog didn't move, only stared toward the window. A faint, wavering glow bled through the swirling snow outside, a car's headlight cutting across the yard. It swayed slightly, as if the driver were struggling to keep control on the icy ground. Footsteps followed, heavy, uneven, staggering. Noah rose, spine straightening, his injuries forgotten in the rush of readiness. The door rattled once, then again. When it finally swung open, the wind blasted in, carrying snow and the sharp tang of alcohol. A man filled the doorway, tall, broad, with thick arms and a face that had once been handsome but was now sagging with drink and rage. His hair was dark, unwashed, plastered to his forehead. Stubble covered his jaw in uneven patches, and his eyes were bloodshot, unfocused, but burning with anger. Derek Turner, Lucas and Emily's father. Behind him stood two other men, both burly, both bundled in cheap coats, faces red from the cold and the liquor. One was thin but wiry, with a narrow gaze that darted around the room. The other was heavier, with a round face and a mean twist to his mouth. Their expressions carried the unmistakable confidence of people who believed no one would challenge them. Derek swayed forward, gripping the doorframe. His voice slurred but loud enough to echo through the small home. Where's my family?" Ranger let out a louder growl, stepping between Derek and the sleeping children. Noah squared his shoulders, face hardening. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway fully. "This house isn't safe for them," Noah said. "Not with you like this." Derek blinked through the haze of alcohol, processing the stranger's presence, the dog's stance, and the protective heat behind Noah's words. "You don't tell me how to see my kids," Derek spat, breath hot with whiskey. Noah didn't flinch. "There are children sleeping here," he said quietly. "You should lower your voice." Derek's jaw tightened. The two men behind him shifted their weight as if ready for a fight. Snow swirled around them, the storm closing in. Inside, the fire crackled faintly. Emily stirred but didn't wake. Lucas mumbled in his sleep. Rachel barely breathed. Noah stood at the threshold, every muscle coiled, every sense sharpened, as the father he had heard only in broken whispers now loomed before him. And Derek Turner did not look like a man returning home. He looked like a man bringing danger with him. The showdown in the snowstorm. Wind clawed at the roof, rattling loose shingles as the storm outside reached a violent pitch. Snow spiraled across the yard in thick white streaks, the kind that swallowed sound and blurred every edge. But even the blizzard couldn't drown the tension gathering at the threshold of the Turner house. Derek Turner lurched forward, breath sour with liquor, shoulders swaying beneath a ripped canvas jacket. His face, once rugged in a respectable way, now sagged with months of neglect, patchy beard, cracked lips, and eyes glazed with the kind of anger that had nowhere to land but home. Behind him, the two men he'd brought, both drunk, both unfamiliar, both trouble, hovered like shadows. The thinner one, with a hooked nose and a jittery twitch in his left eye, scanned the room as if measuring what could be stolen. The heavier man, neck disappearing into his coat collar, had a sneer carved permanently into his round face. Ranger braced himself in the doorway, hackles raised. His deep-chested growl reverberated across the floorboards, a steady warning that made even the heavier man step back. Noah stayed calm. His stance widened slightly, weight settling onto his good leg. His eyes, usually warm with quiet empathy, narrowed to sharp, disciplined focus. No fear, no hesitation, only readiness. "You're not stepping over this threshold," Noah said, voice low, unwavering. Derek threw his arms wide, nearly slipping in the snow swirling behind him. "Those are my kids," he slurred. "My house. Move." Noah didn't move. Ranger growled louder, chest rumbling like distant thunder. "You abandoned them," Noah said. 5 days without food, in a collapsing house, in this weather. Whatever claim you think you have, you surrendered it the moment you walked away." The words struck Derek like blows. Rage twisted across his features. He lunged forward. It happened fast. Noah sidestepped, pivoting with practiced efficiency. He caught Derek's arm, redirected his momentum, and swept him down into the snow-packed ground. Derek hit with a dull thud, breath exploding from his lungs. Noah knelt, pressing one knee lightly between Derek's shoulder blades, enough to hold him, not enough to injure. The two other men staggered backward. Ranger barked once, loud and sharp, sending them scrambling near the porch steps. Then, red and blue lights cut through the storm. A cruiser pulled up, tires skidding on ice, headlights slicing across the front yard. The siren died, replaced by a heavy silence. The driver's door swung open. Sheriff Nolan Hale stepped out, shoulders filling his thick winter jacket. He was in his late 40s, tall and broad, with a trimmed mustache that couldn't soften the stern angles of his face. Years of service had carved lines around his eyes, but his gaze was sharp and steady. A man who had seen too much to be surprised anymore. He took in the scene, Noah kneeling over Derek, Ranger guarding the doorway, the two drunk men trembling in confusion, and exhaled a long, weary breath. "Noah," he said, voice carrying authority without raising it. "I figured I'd find you in the middle of something." "Evening, Sheriff," Noah replied, not loosening his hold. Nolan walked closer, his boots crunching through the ice. He looked down at Derek, then at the terrified children inside the house. Lucas clung to the edge of the sofa, his small fingers white with fear. Emily peeked over Ranger's back, a trembling tuft of hair and wide eyes. Nolan shook his head with resignation. "Derek Turner," he said, "you are under arrest for child endangerment, abandonment, and intoxicated trespassing." He drew handcuffs from his belt and handed them to Noah, who secured Derek's wrists without resistance. The drunken bravado had drained from Derek's body, leaving behind a slumped, shivering shell of regret and fury. As Nolan guided him upright, Derek muttered under his breath, insults, curses, excuses. None of them mattered. The two men behind him were told to leave immediately or face charges. They stumbled toward the road, vanishing into the storm. When Derek was finally placed in the back of the cruiser, Nolan returned to the porch. Snowflakes clung to his eyebrows. His breath fogged the air in slow, heavy puffs. "Noah," he said quietly, "you pulled these kids out of a disaster, but you know how this works. The state may intervene anyway. They'll want to separate them for safety until the mother recovers." Lucas stepped forward then, barefoot on the wooden floor, still wrapped in Noah's coat. His thin shoulders shook, but he met the sheriff's gaze with a courage far too old for his 9 years. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking, "don't let them take us. Don't let them take Emily." Then he turned to Noah, eyes pleading, "Please don't leave us. You said we were safe." Noah felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't let himself feel since the mission that cost him part of his team and left a permanent ache in his knee. A memory of loss, of being too late, too far, too broken to save everyone. But this time, he was here, and these children needed someone who wouldn't disappear at sunrise. Noah knelt so he was level with Lucas. The storm howled behind him, but his voice was steady. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not tonight. Not tomorrow. You're not facing this alone. Lucas leaned forward and threw his arms around Noah's neck. Emily, still trembling, reached to touch Ranger's fur, and the dog nuzzled her hand gently. Sheriff Nolan watched the small, fragile scene, this rough-edged veteran, the exhausted children, the loyal dog curled around them, and nodded once. "This family has a fighting chance," he murmured. Through the window, where Rachel stirred faintly on the sofa, unaware her life had just changed again. Tonight, the danger had been pushed back, but the real battle, keeping this family together, was only beginning. The winter house warmed again. Morning crept into Frost Hollow like a shy visitor, pale sunlight glancing off the snow-laden pines. The storm had passed, but the cold remained a living thing, heavy, sharp, lingering in every gap of the battered cabin. Noah stood at the doorway, coat dusted with frost, already planning what needed to be repaired first. He had slept only a few hours in the old armchair, boots still on, Ranger curled loyally at his feet. The decision had settled inside him during the long hours before dawn. He was staying, for as long as this family needed him. Lucas watched from the living room, the boy's thin frame wrapped in a blanket that still swallowed his shoulders. There was a quiet strength in the way he stood, fear tempered by determination, far older than 9 years should bear. Emily, smaller and still fragile from nights spent trembling in the dark, clung to Ranger's tail while the dog patted gently around her. Rachel had awakened briefly during the night, confusion clouding her pale blue eyes, before exhaustion pulled her under again. Even in half-sleep, she had looked defeated, cheekbones sharp, lips cracked, dark hair tangled from days of illness and worry. A woman worn thin by life, yet still trying to hold on to something that resembled hope. Noah had seen many faces like hers overseas, people who had endured too much for too long, yet somehow survived. He recognized the tremor of someone who expected abandonment more than rescue. By sunrise, he had filled out the emergency volunteer form Sheriff Nolan left behind, a temporary crisis caregiver designation. It allowed him to stay legally with the children until the state reviewed the case, and it granted Ranger continued access as a service animal. He signed it without hesitation. Now, standing in the brittle morning light, he began the first step of stitching the broken home back together. He hauled his toolkit from the truck bed, boots crunching in the frozen snow. The roof needed patching. The broken window in the bedroom had let in far too much cold. The back door didn't latch. The stove wouldn't light. The entire kitchen smelled faintly of mildew and emptiness. Ranger stayed inside with the children, lying near Emily, as Lucas showed her how to braid the frayed edge of a blanket. The dog's presence, steady, patient, warm, quieted fears in ways words couldn't. Noah climbed the rickety ladder and began replacing loose shingles. His breath fogged into the winter air, fingers numbing even through gloves. Yet a strange peace settled over him. Manual labor grounded him, brought a rhythm to his thoughts. In the Navy, fixing things had meant life or death. Broken gear, broken lines, broken spirits. You repaired what you could. You held together what was falling apart. By noon, the worst leaks were patched. He moved to the shattered window next, replacing the cardboard with reinforced glass he'd brought from his truck. The simple sound of a window closing properly made the entire cabin feel less vulnerable. Inside, Rachel stirred again. This time she stayed awake longer, blinking at the warm glow from the repaired stove and the scent of wood smoke drifting through the air. Her skin still held a grayish tint, but her eyes were clearer. She pushed herself upright, her thin wrists trembling. "Noah, you did all this?" she whispered. He turned from the doorway, brushing sawdust from his coat. "One step at a time," he said. "Your house just needed a chance." Tears welled in her eyes, silent, aching tears that carried the weight of years of holding everything in. "I didn't think anyone would ever help us again." Noah shook his head softly. "You're not alone anymore." For a long moment, she simply breathed, as if remembering how. Over the next days, improvements multiplied. The kitchen was scrubbed clean, the refrigerator filled with food Noah purchased in town. The living room floor re-emerged from beneath scattered clothing and trash bags. The furnace, long dormant, grumbled back to life after Noah coaxed it into working order. Everywhere he worked, Ranger supervised with quiet discipline. Emily followed the dog like a tiny shadow, her confidence growing with each step she took beside him. She even began talking again, small sentences at first, shy and tentative, but spoken with a budding trust. Lucas returned to school with a new coat Noah bought from the supply store. He walked into the classroom straighter than before, courage stitched into each movement. Rachel began therapy sessions at the community clinic. Her counselor, Dr. Evelyn Marlowe, a soft-spoken woman with warm brown eyes and streaks of silver in her hair, saw her twice a week. Dr. Marlowe had a soothing presence, always wearing knitted shawls and earthy tones, and she listened in a way that made Rachel finally feel seen. Medication was prescribed, and for the first time in months, Rachel managed to sleep restfully. Weeks passed, marked by rising warmth inside the house, even as snow piled higher outside. One morning, sunlight glittered across the yard like scattered crystals. Emily toddled out, wrapped in a thick pink coat, cheeks rosy. She ran to Noah, threw her arms around his leg, and whispered, "You're warmer than the fire." The words hit him harder than he expected. After years of warfare, loss, and the coldness that had found a home inside his chest, he felt something thaw. The Turner family was healing, slowly, delicately, but undeniably. And all of it had begun because a frightened boy had run from the winter woods, grabbed the sleeve of a stranger, and begged, "Please follow me home." Sometimes the greatest miracles don't come with thunder or shining light. Sometimes they arrive quietly, in the shape of a tired soldier who chose compassion over comfort, a loyal dog who guarded two frightened children, or a stranger who refused to walk away when it mattered most. And maybe, just maybe, those moments are reminders that God is still at work in this world. Not always in grand gestures, but in the small acts of courage and kindness that heal a broken home, steady a trembling heart, or bring a family back from the edge. When a little boy ran through the winter woods begging for help, it looked like the end of hope, but heaven has a way of stepping in through ordinary people. And on that night, grace found its way to a forgotten doorstep. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share it. You never know who might need a reminder that goodness still rises in dark seasons. Leave a comment about where you're watching from. Subscribe so you never miss another story of faith, courage, and second chances. And may God bless you and your family today and every day, just as He blessed the Turner family with the miracle they never expected.